Good afternoon, class. I can't be with you today, but you're in great hands with Ms. Littell and Ms. Yanis. If you haven't already done so, please pick up the handout at the front of the room. We'll be using it a bit later. Today's goal is to finish your short essay with an evolving thesis, change sentences, and integrated quotes. That 2-page essay, as you know, is due tonight. So we've got a few things to do before we continue writing that essay. Of course, if you don't get it done in class today, you'll have to get it done before 11 o'clock this evening. We'll start with interest journals. We'll look at my feedback for your 4-page rhetorical analysis paper. I've got some reminders for you regarding chain sentences, framing quotes, finding, and then I'm going to talk to you a little bit about finding sources and citations in the works cited page. So let's get started. We'll start with interest journals. Don't get them yet. Wait. I want to go over the guidelines with you one more time. This frame will be up there too while you're writing, just to remind you of what they are. Write your first and last name and the date at the top. Print neatly, consistent with letting your thoughts go wild. Don't name any names, please. And you can go off topic and you can go back on topic, and write on both sides of a sheet. So you'll see them on the round tables and on the back of the room on the counters. Pick one that you'd like, and we'll write in it for 8 minutes, and you can pause the video. Okay. I hope you enjoyed that. We're going to now read my feedback. So go to Canvas, open your laptops, go to Canvas, and when you get there, click Assignments and go to In-Class Activity, Response to Analysis Essay Feedback. And there you'll see directions, including 3 questions to answer. These are not long answers, but do use sentences. You'll see the directions there. It won't take you probably more than about 8 or 9 minutes to do this activity. You can pause now to get that done. Now we're going to get that refresher on integrating and framing quotes just a bit based on some things I saw in the 4-page papers I graded this weekend. And I'm going to read from the top, like several of the papers I read this weekend. My quote in this paragraph needs to be better integrated and framed. Remember, to integrate is to put the quote in your own syntax. We have 4 rules for that. And to frame is to build it into a paragraph in which you move from a general to the specific quote and then out to the general point from that quote again. So this quote is also too long to be effective, since I can't possibly use it all, and since it will distract my readers. By the time they're well into this quote, they're going to forget about my paper and the point of my paragraph. So we need to break the quote into more manageable chunks and toss the parts of the quote that really don't have any, aren't really going to be much help to the point I'm making in this paragraph. For this activity, either on your own or with your shoulder buddy, interlineate some changes. To interlineate means to put between the lines. So you're going to interlineate some changes on the hard copy of it, and you don't need to rewrite the entire paragraph. We'll get that accomplished as we compare notes a bit later. So suggested interlineations, I'll just start you off here. Another method Collins uses is repetition. You could say, for example, comma, and then lead into some part of that quote. And that, of course, would be a very modest integration of the quote into your own syntax. So have at it for a while, and then we'll compare notes. We'll pause the video now. All right, now that you've had a chance to consider some changes, the teacher could lead you into sharing a few of these with the class, and then we're going to look at a paragraph after she does that. So we'll pause the video now to give you guys an opportunity to share some of the ideas you came up with. All right, now we're going to look at least one possible paragraph after some some integration and framing. And I'll read it to you, and then we can go over it a little bit. To broaden his listeners' horizons, Collins connects with their high school experience with the repeated command, "Pay attention!" These high school graduates, Collins reminds them at their commencement, have been told by their teachers for years to pay attention, but Collins also redirects them to pay attention not always just to what is on the blackboard, but what is out the window. Collins then uses anaphora to apply this command outside of the classroom. Pay attention to the natural world. Pay attention to your daydreams. Pay attention to what is on the periphery, for that is where the small wonders often reside. Close quote. This broader land of the natural world, daydreams, and the periphery has no borders. For the poet, and hopefully for the high school graduate, it is also the land of freedom. So, a couple of things about this. You can see the integration beginning at the very first sentence there, where I've got real good control over my syntax. Showing a great command, if I do say so myself. Same with the second sentence. Some of you thought that Collins' commencement address was to college grads, but it was a high school commencement that he spoke at, and that you may have been fooled by the sort of hoity-toity name of the institute that was his high school. Anyway, as I began to tear into the paragraph to integrate it better and to frame it better, you know what? I ended up reading more closely. And I think that's what happens when we begin to chop up the quote and to put it in our own syntax. It makes us read more carefully. And what I discovered yesterday when I was doing this is that, hey, he's making a real connection with them when he says to them, you know how your teachers always say pay attention. So there's a rhetorical tool right there that he's using to address part of his rhetorical situation. He's using the instance that they've heard all their life, the remark that they've heard all their scholastic life to pay attention. And further into it, let's see, I realized that there was anaphora, which I think the original writer probably saw but didn't bother to mention because, he or she did not have to break up that quote or didn't break up the quote. So there you are. There's also one more thing. It does move from the general back into the specific quotes and then back out to a general point again, and so makes its own paragraph. Your paragraphs don't need to be much longer than this, and they do need to be as focused as this, but you can see how framing quotes really helps you to focus your paragraphs. Okay, now we're going to go into change sentences here. Now you will have to write an entire paragraph. This paragraph needs changed sentences. You may recall from last class that the concept of a changed sentence is this. Something early on in the sentence needs to refer to something earlier in the paragraph. I'll say that again. Something early on in the sentence needs to refer to something earlier in the paragraph. So we know that the first sentence in the paragraph can't be a changed sentence because there's nothing earlier in the paragraph. But we want to have something early on refer to something earlier in the paragraph because we want our readers to connect very quickly in our sentence to something that's occurred before, so she will know that this writer has it together and that this sentence has something to do with what's come before. As it now stands in this paragraph, she won't have that experience. I'll read the first two sentences. The natives of Benin in Africa created superb bronze plaques. Armor, guns, feathered hats, and dogs. So here she is in the subject of the second sentence, wondering, why are we talking about guns, feathered hats, armor, dogs? She shouldn't have to work that hard. We want our readers to work, but not at the wrong things. So we need to do that, even at the risk of a of passive voice, because passive voice, it may not be as strong, obviously, as active voice, but by putting something early on in the sentence that comes earlier, passive voice is one method of doing it, and it isn't so bad. So you need to redo this. Your paragraph should have no fewer than 4 sentences that can include the first sentence. Do keep that one the way it is. But remember some of our strategies: passive voice, rearranging material, totally, and rearranging even where things occur in the paragraph. Now that most of you have gotten through writing your paragraph, I'll ask the teacher if she wouldn't mind calling on a couple of you to read your paragraphs to the class, and we'll check it over for whether you got those chain sentences going. Pause the video again. Thank you. All right, now we'll look at one example of this. It's not the best one, perhaps, and it may be not as good as yours, but here is one example of how to pull this off. The blue text is something early in the text, and the red is something earlier in the paragraph. Here's the sentence that you were given. The natives of Benin in Africa created superb bronze plaques. These plaques rendered the region's Portuguese explorers, and the depictions of the explorers' armors, guns, feathered hats, and dogs are striking. I just didn't like the word beautiful there, so I used striking instead. But you see there how these plaques refers to something earlier in the paragraph in that sentence. So that's our first chain sentence. I made it a compound sentence, and even the second independent clause starts with something that's earlier. Depictions is synonym really for renderings, which is in the first clause. But that's a side note. We go on to the second chain sentence, the third sentence of the paragraph. The Benin natives' metalwork, I guess I should have said, is just as good as that of ancient Greece and Rome. We've had the Benin natives earlier, and the last sentence, these isolated natives, once again, starting with something that came earlier. So remember that your chain sentences, something needs to be early on. It's not good enough that the reference to something earlier in the paragraph occurs late in your sentence. By that time, your reader may be needlessly lost. All right. Now we're going to look at where we can find some research if we want to go beyond what we have done so far in our papers with the just the interview that we had last class. As you know, you don't have to do any more research for your 2-page paper beyond last week's interview. But if you'd like to do more research in your paper, here's a good way to do it. This is a library page that a couple of librarians at Nova made for us, mainly for the big paper that we're going to be doing later about our career or our major in college. But the jobs that you learned about when you were interviewing your interviewee last class can be found here too. So this will also get you a little introduced to this material. Now, the easy way to get here is by going onto Canvas and clicking the icon on the home page that says research. You'll end up on this page. You may have to log in. But the hard way, if that's not available, is to type in what's in blue on this screen, and it's available even if Canvas is down as it was yesterday. Hopefully it won't be down today. So go ahead and go there, and when you get there, click Industry Overviews. And let's see, once you've done that, you can click any career industry overviews. These are how the librarians, this is what the librarians did with the results of that survey I gave you a while ago, where you put in what your major would be in college and what you anticipate your career to be beyond that. Of course, you may not be certain about what you're going to be doing after school, but you gave it your best guess, and they took all that information and made a site that leads you to some material for everything that you guys thought you might study or do. And they're categorized here. That's just a little aside. So just pick any category for the purpose of your short paper. It doesn't really matter. I just picked the first one up there, which was arts, media, design. And then I just picked any sub-industry, which happened to be the first one, design. Doesn't matter which. And you're going to end up at Ferguson's Career Guidance Center. And then I just typed in what my pretend student may need to know more about for purposes of the paper. So he interviewed someone who, like me, during high school worked at a fast food restaurant. And so you just type in fast food there, or whatever it is, lifeguarding or whatever. And then you'll get some results. I found one that I like, restaurant and fast food service managers. I click there. There's some material I look over. I find something from my paper. I copy and paste it into my paper. This is a short paper, so we're not going to get terribly organized with all that. Just copy and paste right in there what we like, integrate it well, frame it well. And then you'll notice the second arrow is to a citation. All of the subscription databases have these links to citations. Depending on the database, they are in different places. Ferguson's is where you see the arrow pointing to. So if I click that, I'm going to be led to several citations. Usually you want to select MLA because that's what we're using. You can copy and paste that into your works cited page directly. So if you want other research, though, beyond Ferguson's, there's a lot of good stuff back on the homepage of the library site that the librarians made for us. You can click any of those and see what's available. It's kind of fun. And then for formatting the works cited page in Google Doc, you can go to the assignment, the 2-page assignment, go down to the bottom. There's a video that you hopefully are familiar with on how to format your paper for MLA formatting when you're using Google Docs. And you don't need the first 4 minutes and 50 seconds in that video for the purposes of formatting your works cited page. So you can scrub right to 450 and watch the video from that point to its end about 3 minutes later. And then basically now, having gone through that, you're ready to write. So take the rest of the class to work on any of the 3 homework assignments you have that are listed here. And do remember, before you turn in your 2-page essay tonight, you want to check it over against the rubric, and does it focus on a single issue? It isn't just a hodgepodge of things about the job. Does the thesis evolve as it encounters evidence with all 5 steps present? Those 5 steps are in the material beneath the assignment as well, just to remind you of what they are there. They are also, I may have put them on the blackboard. They still might be there. Does the do your paragraphs mix generalities and specifics? And have well punctuated, and does it have well punctuated and well integrated quotes? Does it have a works cited page, even if it has only the citation for the interview? And by the way, if you want to see how interviews are cited, it's very simple in MLA, and you can look at the first link beneath the assignment to the model 2-page paper, and you'll see at the end of it a Works Cited page that includes the interview that I had of Mr. York. So for research, there's that link again, or you can click the research button on the homepage of Canvas. All right, thanks guys, and thank you, Ms. Janos. Thank you, Ms. Littell, and see you soon.